Hi, everyone. Welcome to Soc 119 at Penn State University. Glad to have you all here. I'm Lori Mulvey. I'm the Director of World in Conversation at Penn State, and I'm going to facilitate the conversation we're going to have today. And I'm about to introduce our guests. So here we go. First, Sadhguru is a yogi, a mystic, and a visionary, and he's been named one of India's 50 most influential people, and his work has touched the lives of millions of people. Sadhguru has been an influential voice at major global forums such as the United Nations and the World Economic Forum. More than 3 decades ago, Sadhguru founded the Isha Foundation, a nonprofit organization with human well-being as its core commitment. The 11 million Isha volunteers are pursuing initiatives to address soil, water, climate issues, and they're undertaking projects such as planting trees. Isha has initiated a wide range of programs aimed at uplifting rural communities, including building schools. Hope you're enjoying these photos, and especially you're going to love this one. Sadhguru, we've learned, loves riding motorcycles and is well known for that, as you can imagine. He also took a 10,000-mile bike ride across the United States, in which he visited American Indian communities to learn more about and support indigenous ways of knowing. It's pretty cool. He's also an author of the New York Times bestseller, Inner Engineering, A Yogi's Guide to Joy, and a forthcoming book named Karma, A Yogi's Guide to Crafting Your Own Destiny. So welcome, Sadhguru. This will be an interesting conversation with Sam Richards, who most of the Soc 119 students know somewhat, but let me just say a few other things about Sam. He's an award-winning teacher and a well-known sociologist at Penn State University. He's also known to be an iconoclast, which we can talk more about what that means at another time, but it is true. He teaches, as we all know, the largest race, ethnicity, and culture class in the United States, with about 800 students every semester populating that class. The class is live streamed to the world, as we are doing right now, and it has generated 30 million views by people in 200 countries. Soc 119 has been the subject of an Emmy Award-winning television broadcast called You Can't Say That. And if any of you think about Sam, you understand why that title is the title. Sam's willingness to talk to take the risk actually to explore ideas from multiple ideological perspectives is really what led him also to be named by David Horowitz in his book as one of the 101 most dangerous professors in America, because exploring ideas is dangerous, evidently. Anyway, arguing that that the empathy is the core of sociology, Sam's radical experiment in empathy is one of the most widely viewed TEDx talks online, and also how he came to be labeled one of the parents of radical empathy. He wants you to know that I was named the other parent because we are professional colleagues. But anyway, Sam's TED Talk has led to a lot of initiatives, which is over the past 10 years, with global organizations such as the UN Development Program, the UN Alliance of Civilizations, and NATO. It also catalyzed a global dialogue program at World in Conversation, a very robust global dialogue program that brings students in conflict regions around the world into dialogue with Penn State students. And this is one of our teams who make it happen from Afghanistan, who we are privileged to work with. So I think I can also say that Sam is a friend to so many that know him around the world. He's a very good friend. So anyway, welcome Sam and Sadhguru to this conversation that we've been waiting for. And before we kick off, I just want to say my role is just to help this to be a conversation as much as possible. And what I will do will be to pause at certain times, ask for more details at other times, and just try to keep our conversation on track. I have some questions to start with, but it'll be organic as you two start talking. So welcome.
Welcome, Sadhguru.
Namaskaram, Sam and Lori, and all of your students who are in your university and elsewhere. Namaskaram to every one of you. Well, it's
Thanks for being here.
at the right age. I did not spend enough time in the university, so these days I'm going back too often.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, it's good. Well, this is a nice place to be.
Definitely.
It's a very interesting classroom, and we talk about a lot of interesting perspectives. And so before you kick off with your first question, to the students who are in my class, let me just say, the first top hat question is going up in about 15 to 20 seconds. So be aware of that, my friends. Okay.
So let's kick us off.
Yeah, go ahead.
And
please.
Sadhguru, I'm going to ask you to respond first as the true guest of Social 19. Okay. Okay. How do we do that? We need to turn up a mic.
Yeah,
for
we're
Sadhguru?
just working on Sadhguru's going up. There we are.
Okay.
I think you're a little better.
Is that better?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
That's good.
Yes. Okay. So let me ask the question, and we'll see how we're doing tech-wise. So, how I see it, Sam studies people in groups, and Sadhguru, you study the inner world of people. And so, I just want to ask you both from different sides of the same coin. So, starting with you, Sadhguru, when people transform their inner world or their inner consciousness, how does that help them to manage or navigate more thoughtfully in social groups?
Well, when we say inner, what is it that we are referring to as inner? Say, normally everything that individual human beings know about themselves is their physiological reality and their psychological realities. And of course, Sam knows his sociological realities. So, these are the three areas that we know: our life as a social being, our life as a physical being, our life as a psychological being. So, thought, emotion, physiological structures and social structures, this is what individual human beings are normally understanding as themselves. So, I don't have to talk about the social realities, we know they can change. We have gathered a certain amount of society around us, tomorrow morning we can go somewhere else and everything could change. Coming to the body, this body also, since the time we were born till now, we have accumulated this body. We did not come just like this. So it's an accumulation. Anything that you accumulate, you can only claim as yours. You cannot say it's me. If I say this piece of cloth is me, you know I'm a case, all right. If I say this is mine, well, you'll say fine. So, whatever you accumulate, it can only be yours, it can never be you. So having said that, body is accumulated. What you call as body is an accumulation of food. Mind is an accumulation of the impressions that you have taken in consciously and unconsciously. So what you know as yourself right now is a heap of impressions and a heap of food and material around you. So, in all this, where are you? Do you really exist? Of course you exist. Only thing is, what is the nature of my existence is the question. Everybody knows that they exist, but what is the nature of… If you look profoundly enough, you will see everything that you think is you is actually something that you gathered. So what you gather is fine, it is yours for now, but it will not be ours forever. This body we will have to shed one day.
So how does that… Sorry, I'm doing it. How does that awareness, that level of awareness shift how we are in the social world? What have you seen?
See, now if you experience yourself beyond physicality and beyond your psychological limitations, then your experience of life is very, very super inclusive. When you're inclusive in your experience, now if I look at you, I can see you as you're American, you're a woman, you're white, you're this, you're that, like this I can go on identifying. In all these identities, suppose I give you 10 different identifications like this, in this I may be okay with 5 of them and I may have trouble with 5 of them. This is how we're developing sociological or social barriers around us. But when my experience is very inclusive, that is, I experience… See, this is what the word yoga means. The word yoga in the East Coast there means something else, twisting and turning, but the word yoga means union. Union means that you have experienced life beyond your accumulations. So you have experienced everything as yourself. Even for one moment, if you experience whoever, right now Sam is there, let's not take him as an example, any of your students or what is around you as yourself. After that, nobody has to teach you any morality, what is right, what is wrong, what to do, what not to do, because your way of interacting with everything like you would interact with yourself, how you would behave with yourself, the same way you would do with the rest of the world. Once you do this, there is really no social issues for you. And according to how we how we transact depends upon our experience, our our intelligence, and what positions of society we are placed in. All these things will determine to some extent. But the most important thing is, are you an exclusive life, which is an artificial idea, or are you an inclusive life, which is the nature of existence?
So this reminds me of the Christian idea of love your enemy. That you're showing how that actually happens.
No, I would… can I say something about that?
Yeah, sure, of course.
See, if I identify you as my enemy, loving you is very hard, it's pretentious.
Exactly.
Why should I identify you as my enemy? Right now, for some reason, your path and my path, maybe we are in a collision course, but still you are not my enemy. I see you as myself. But
Exactly.
we need to handle this situation because external situation needs to be dealt with to the best of our abilities.
Absolutely. And I think we're gonna talk about that, which is great. So Sam, I just want to hear you speak of the other side, how studying people in social groups affects or influences or impacts the inner world.
Well, I think it's similar to what Sadhguru said about the how like life itself in some ways is a trickster. I mean, you didn't say the trickster word, but in many ways that's, I think, what happens. And, and I think myself about, as a sociologist, about the importance of understanding conformity, and that, conformity is foundational to all social life. That the only way, in fact, that human beings can survive is if we have other human beings who socialize us in some way to be part of some kind of social group, and really to, in a way, understand what it means to be human. So I think about, like when there have been feral children, even in a way, who haven't been socialized, and people don't even know how to walk. They can't even stand up straight. There are certain things that we assume are true and are just part of the human condition, or innate in us, and they're really not. And so for me, if I want to be an autonomous actor, if I want to be an individual who really is, and this is important part of Sadhguru's new book that's coming out, by the way, being released next week. We'll talk about later at the end. But if I want to be the kind of subject of my own destiny in a way, then I need to understand all the ways in which my life is being mediated by the social groups around me, by the socialization process around me. And so 99% of the time, I am conforming to things that other people are doing around me, to things that other people expect me to do and want me to do. And yet, if you ask any average person, certainly in the West, they will say that 99% of the time they're acting as an autonomous individual, and they're the subject of their own destinies and their own lives. So for me, it's really important to understand the relationship between this kind of sort of inner journey in the social groups.
And it's funny when you use the word conformity, and Sadhguru, you use this word accumulation. They have we could talk about that for a long time. It seems like you're actually talking about something very parallel and kind of getting to a similar place. And I actually want to not speak to your book directly, but the next set of questions I want to ask does come from our reading of your book, which is about karma. And so there's several questions, but I'm going to start because you've already said it. What do we do? What do we think about? What do each of you? But again, Sadhguru, let's start with you. What do you think about this external condition of social inequality and unfairness that we just enter by birth? And when you think about karma, maybe you could say just how you see that. How do you enter into this external condition and talk about karma?
The significance of being human is, as per the evolutionary theory, which in some way must be related to sociological conditions of who we are. Well, we have been placed above all the millions of species which are in this world. in terms of our capabilities, in terms of our neurological sensitivity, in terms of the richness of experience. No other creature is endowed the way the human being is endowed. We are capable. Whether we are using that capability or not is a different matter, but we are capable both of pain and pleasure, joy and misery, blissfulness and struggles. We are capable of it in a much more intense way simply because we have a far more developed neurological system than compared to any other creature on this planet. So literally, in terms of life process, we are placed on top of the world. But most human beings are not feeling like they're on top of the world because they're always comparing themselves to somebody. Suppose all of us were here, of course we wouldn't be on the Zoom, suppose we were here 10,000 years ago. We would all be cave people, maybe wearing loincloths or walking around naked with bare minimum, just a meal a day or a meal in 3 days would be our idea of survival and we would be fine. But today, our neighbor has a car, our neighbor has something else and somebody else has something else. Now, based on that, human miseries are manufactured. So what I'm trying to tell you is, human experience is entirely from within. But the dynamics of the society is not always ours. So I would say there are, let's say, 5 dimensions of, pleasantness or success, let us say. See, if you're pleasant on your body, in your body, we say this is health, we definitely want that. If you become very pleasant in your body, we call this pleasure. If your mind becomes pleasant, we call it peace. If it becomes very pleasant, we call it joy. If your emotions become pleasant, we call it love. If it becomes very pleasant, we call it compassion. If your surroundings become pleasant, we call it success. Success is the only thing which needs sociological involvement. The other 4 dimensions are 100% in our hands. But unfortunately, most human beings have left these 4 dimensions also in the society's hands. The moment you leave it in the world's hands, because nothing in the world ever in a social situation will happen 100% the way you want it. A little bit your way, a little bit somebody's way, this is the only way the world will happen. Even within a family, life will never happen 100% your way. 51% if it's happening in your way, you are doing great. If you expect 100%, nobody will be around you, that's all.
So
As simple as that.
So you're saying that the kind of social inequality is really only in this, that we are concerned about and talking about in the external world is really one dimension of all of the ones that you listed that has the power in the external world to cause us suffer, to give us some measure of suffering when all the others are under our own control.
All the others are absolutely… human experience is absolutely in our control. But social realities are not always in our control. We have to strive to create those realities. We have to strive to create the kind of societies that we want. See now, within America, now we are talking about the racial differences, the religious problems and other things, all right? But now the rest of the world is looking at America and they're thinking that they're really having a great time. But here there are so many miserable people, nobody realizes that they think America is doing great, let's go there, kind of idea is there everywhere in the world. So inequality in the society will always be there and always every generation must strive to level it as much as possible. But will it ever get absolutely leveled? It will not happen because that's the nature of external realities. But within ourselves, being peaceful, joyful and creating an exuberant sense of life within us, this is 100% in the hands of the individual. If you take charge of this, out of 5, 4 are in your hands, means 80% is in your hands. Only 20% you have to strive for.
Yeah.
So
That is an eternal striving.
This is great. This is a big statement. And I have a question to build on that, but I don't know if you want to respond first.
I think one thing that I want to say is that I really, really appreciate Sadhguru's answer because, as a sociologist, there's a way in which, I dedicate my life to this kind of sociological plane of reality, but I am with you that it's a small part of our reality as human beings. And, I've come to know it very well. I talk about it. I share these other planes as well with you, Sadhguru. I talk about them, but the social plane, this world, this temporal world, is the one that I swim. It's the pond that I swim in most of the time. And so often I feel like I'm doing a disservice by emphasizing or in some ways encouraging people to focus more directly on all of the many dimensions of this one part of human reality and human experience. And then we get stuck in this place of only seeing the world as greater than, less than, and always comparing ourselves to everybody around us. And I see the wound of that. Now, mind you, it's one thing for me to do that, here in the United States as a white man, to have this conversation. And people will often say, well, it's easy for you to say because of your particular demographic group to which you belong. But still, just from a spiritual perspective, it just feels like we're just constantly tripping up by talking about this one dimension over all the other ones. So I really appreciate your words going out to my students in particular.
Yeah, and I want to push on it, obviously, because I think I also don't want to just talk about, Sadhguru, when you say the word success, it leads us into some of these categories, some of the categories which, at least in our world, are like race, class, gender. Simply. And I'm always thinking about other categories like aging and disabilities and disabilities, the spectrum of those things. And so I want to just expand the field, first of all, because we come into the world. So I don't know how I would use that word success when it would come to able-bodied or disabled. But my question is, so I wanted to expand the field of what we're talking about. What is the unique, and I'm going to say karmic work, I don't know if that's the way we want to talk about it, of advantaged people or people who are more in the majority in the world that they're in, the external world, versus the karmic work, if you will, of the person in a more disadvantaged place in the external world? What is the unique work in relation to one another? Who wants to answer that first? Karmic work, I think, suggests your answer, Sadhguru.
Okay. See, as long as individual human beings are identified with their accumulations of either wealth, money, body, or the psychological content, as long as they're identified with this, their instinct of self-preservation is the main force in their life. As long as your instinct of self-preservation is the main force, naturally it is you versus the world. Well, you wouldn't want to fight the whole world, so you include a group of people. They may be a religious group or a racial group or a nation or whichever way, but it's you versus the rest of the world. When there are larger interests, you will form a larger group. Otherwise, within the group, you will fight as smaller groups. Otherwise, you will go further down and further down. Within the family, 5 people are fighting with each other, mainly because their sense of self-survival is always on, because they're identified with the accumulations that they have gathered. This is all they have. This is all they call as themselves. These thoughts, these ideas, these emotions, this body, and the little things that they've gathered around them, this is all they have. So naturally they will cling to them. This is why turning inward and experiencing a dimension beyond one's accumulations, which is naturally inclusive. As a life force, it is naturally inclusive. See, we sit here, this is my body, that is your body. This is my mind, that is your mind. But there is no such thing as this is my life and that is your life. This is one living cosmos. You have captured some, I have captured some. If your experience sinks beyond your accumulations, if your experience is rooted in the life that you are, not in the body that you are, not in the mind that you are, not in the accumulations that you are, especially ridiculous is the skin color that you are. If you are not in that, you are naturally inclusive. In this, your instinct of self-preservation will come down to its natural level. All of us have to protect our bodies, there's no question about it. Because you can't, if you destroy it, you can't recreate it, it's gone. So everybody has instinct of self-preservation, but is that the biggest thing within you? Because the most significant aspect of being human compared to other creatures is, For them, nature has drawn two lines within which they live and die. Their lives are fixed in such a way by nature that 90% of it is fixed by nature. 10% latitude is allowed for individual animals approximately, not exact percentage, I'm just saying. But in the case of a human being, only 10% is fixed by nature, 90% is left in our hands. So essentially what human beings are suffering today, what they're struggling, what they're fighting is all about they do not know how to handle their freedom. If their lives were just fixed like any other creature, there would be no wars, there would be no race, there would be no religion, they would be just fine within those two lines. But the most significant thing is, just one moment, most significant thing is for this one creature, nature has removed the top line. You could be anything, you could be just any kind of possibility. It is that which we are suffering, the greatest privilege that's been conferred upon us. That is what we are struggling with, because we have been given an intelligence for which we don't have a stable enough base. That is the main problem right now with the humanity.
I'm glad you're saying that so clearly. How do you want to respond to that?
Sadhguru, so I want to, if you could do me a favor. So if sitting in front of you was a group of Dalits, and next to them a group of Brahmins, let's say, right?
What does that mean for those who don't know?
So people who are really at the lowest caste and people in an upper caste. And in the United States, the lowest class and upper class. What would you say to them when the people at the lowest end are saying, oh, I suffer so much, and I suffer so much, and the people at the upper class are.
Can I maybe add a piece? Maybe I don't have time to understand or experience this inner world in the way that someone else does who has less suffering.
See, you need to understand this. Human experience essentially is coming from within us. Do you agree with me? Your pain and pleasure comes within you, joy and misery comes from within you, agony and ecstasy comes from within you. What is coming from within you, should it happen the way you want it, or should it happen some other way? It has to happen your way. What is around you, what the world does, is not always yours. You have a small stake, but the world will do its own things. So the world will throw whatever it throws at you. What you make out of it within you is entirely yours. Now, Sam is bringing in this issue, but these issues are largely almost of the past. Still, there are some lingering issues like that in India, but largely they have moved back. And right now, I have started a movement as to how, like in our yoga center anywhere, we never ask anybody, what is your religion, what is your caste? It is just irrelevant for me. What is the color of your skin? These things are completely irrelevant, so such questions are never asked. If people come and sit with me, I don't see them as this caste or this race or that race or even religion for that matter. For me, human beings are just life at its highest potential. And the pain of it is that it is largely going waste because of all these discriminations. Distinctions are there between you and me, you cannot stop that. You are different, I am different, and this is why world is beautiful. If all of us were just the same, how to live in this world? You have to jump into the ocean and commit suicide. If everybody looked like you, if everybody was like you, could you live in this world, I'm asking? One person is too much, isn't it? So…
True.
I like that. So it really, it's a sociological construct that's been imposed on us. This goes back to what I was first saying about conformity. It's a sociological construct that's been imposed on us. Somebody say to believe that it's better to have a big house, or it's better to have a big car, or I should have many cars or lots of money. All of that, once we drink in that, there's a certain sense in which it's a poison, right? But once we drink that in, once we take that in, then that becomes the lens through which we see the world. And then that becomes our hell in a way, right? So So I like your answer. I mean, it's the only possible answer, really. But all this other stuff is just stuff that.
But
other
I-
people
The
put out.
reason, I'm sorry.
No, I
The
just wanna-
reason why,
Go ahead, go ahead.
please. The reason why that's happening, what Sam said just now, is because we are identified with our accumulated impressions and experiences.
Mhm.
We are just destroying the future in trying to preserve the past. You cannot fix the past, but you can create the future. This is in your hands. So, this is what in a way, because you brought up the word karma, this is what karma means. Karma means it is the accumulated impressions which have happened to you on various levels. For example, 10 generations ago, how your great-grandmother was, you don't remember, but for all you know, her nose is sitting on your face right now. So I'm saying the body remembers. So there is a karmic imprint which is beyond your memory, which is beyond your understanding and experience. So this memory is ruling you. As long as memory is ruling you, the advantage of this is you will function like an automatic, either a automation as a useful machine or a weapon, it depends who you are. Accordingly, you function that way because with all this information, automation happens, life looks like it's easier to go like this. But what happens is, memory is a certain boundary. See, right now I've seen both of you, now you're in my memory. I say, oh, Sam and Laurie, these are my friends, all right? Somebody else comes who is not in my memory, immediately I'll say, who is this? This is a stranger, all right? So I'm saying your memory is a possibility, at the same time it's a boundary. If you don't cross that boundary, all other possibilities of life are sealed. How quickly you arrive identifying with your memory, whether you do it at 10 or 18 or 25 or 30, accordingly your life gets cramped like that. So essentially what karma means is to be able to see karma as a platform upon which you can do your dance. But if you sink into the platform, you will not dance, you will only sink. So right now, all these experiences, particularly like, I know you're moving in that direction. For example, right now, the colored people in this country, the African American people, they have a painful history. You ask them to forget it, it is not going to happen because the history is so extremely painful. The same is true with the Native American people. Their history is super painful. They have not articulated themselves, at least not even to the extent as the African Americans have, unfortunately, but their history is also very painful. Now can you change it? Can you change yesterday? You cannot change yesterday. I'm saying if terrible things have happened to you, you should become wise, not wounded. This is very important.
So let me ask just a question before we go to some social conflict. Another question that kind of builds on this, but when I think about the social world, or I know Sam, when you think about the social world, we're observing it, studying it, and also knowing we need to solve some problems. And so I don't mean this to be a simplistic question, but just kind of the realm I want you to go in. So if you were sitting in a poor community in the United States who is saying, I'm struggling to find work, I'm struggling to feed my family, it's these external things, including these histories that you just mentioned. Would your and I'm going to say this as like a yes/no question, would your suggestion to them be that the most important thing is this inner work? Would you say like that's what you have to focus on, as opposed to some of things other people would suggest about you need a better job, you need funding in your community, etc. But are you saying no, the most important thing is the inner awareness that you're talking about?
See, I've been interacting and working with lots of business leaders from across the world. Many of them are all multi-billionaires. Are they living exuberantly and joyfully? Unfortunately, a whole lot of them are not. So I'm saying, even at that level where people are talking about billions, their problem is somebody has more billions than them, they're not eating enough, all right, in their understanding or in their experience. So I'm saying there is no end to this. There is no end to a better job, better home, better this, better that. There is no end to it. If you ask me, already in terms of social realities, America is in an excess. The Living Earth statistics says, if every person on this planet lives like an average American citizen, we will need 4.5 planets, but what we have is only half a planet. So I'm saying there is no end to those kind of things. I'm asking you this, right now, if you sit here and you're joyful by your own nature, let's use just one word, not complicate things. You're joyful by your own nature. Right now, if I make sense or it doesn't make sense, both ways you will be joyful, let us say. Or if I am nice to you or not nice to you, both ways you are joyful. If you are joyful by your own nature, not because of me, not because of Sam, not because of all the people who are in the classroom, but you are joyful by your own nature, that means you determine the nature of your experience. Is this extremely important, especially if there is social hardship, I'm asking you?
Can you
And
say…
it's so hard. It's so, what I observe and what I have observed, and this is the nature of my work, not only here in the United States, but in other places of the world. What I observe is that once social hardship enters into one's life, it's very difficult to not focus on that. And then, once we start along that path, and this is exactly what you were saying earlier, and we build our consciousness around that path of overcoming hardship, it never ends. You have one car, you want two cars. You have two motorcycles, you want three motorcycles. You have 2-bedroom house, you want a 5-bedroom house, and then you want
Don't touch the motorcycle, Sam. Leave the motorcycle alone.
Can I…
Yeah, go ahead. So I see that. So again, I appreciate your answer to that, because I just see, and I certainly see among my students who, so many of them over the years say, well, I'll be happy, or I will start my spiritual journey, or I will take control of my life once I've earned a certain amount of money. And once I have these things, then I will start the process. And I think, well, you won't start the process, because you will, first off, you will have forgotten how. And secondly, you will have built such a groove in your mind that you'll just follow these thoughts, and you'll never be able to get out of these thoughts, and then you'll never go where you think you might want to go.
So, but what's the other side that we're not… I don't have the answer, but I'm asking as a sociologist, what do you feel like we're not accounting for?
Well, I guess the other side, I suppose, is what you said, Sadhguru, with the history of people of African ancestry here in the United States. We're seeing it right now, the relationship of Black Americans with the police, or the relationship, with police and with the state and with force. It's really difficult when people are feeling as though there's an injustice that's been committed. And in some ways, they can't be happy because of this injustice. Or I could be happy, but the injustice exists. And maybe I just feel like I have to put my foot down to stand up to the injustice that's happening, maybe to me or maybe to other people. And I will then maybe take this journey, but first I have to do this, because it's just wrong, to see that other people get things at the expense of me or the expense of my group. And that's a really difficult thing for people to overcome. And I'm curious about how you…
So where does a movement for social justice
fit?
This
whole movement for social justice, it's not just like, I want to meet my needs. It's actually, I want justice. And so what do you say to that sentiment, to that sense that people have?
See, the need for justice is a very fundamental requirement within the individual human being, which manifests in the society either as justice or unfortunately a whole lot of times as various levels of injustice. Let me let me tell you something about myself. When I was like 12, 13 years of age, I started seeing injustice in everything. Within the family, there is injustice. In the society, there's injustice. In the political system, there's injustice. In the economic framework, there's injustice. Everywhere there is injustice. So slowly I became angry 24 hours of the day. I'm simply angry for nothing. So this went on for a few years. Then I realized the choice that you have is this. Never is it ever going to happen. Everything will be leveled in the world and everything will be fantastic, okay? There will be highs and lows. Question is, how much high and how much low? How much injustice? We can level it. This may look like a compromise for people who are angry right now, because I would have thought so if somebody had said this to me at that time. But I want them to listen to me carefully, because this is the nature of the world. Always, within the family, if there are two children, one child feels there is injustice against him, for small things. And they will fight and they will be angry about it. Endlessly it will go on. The same thing perpetuates into the society at various levels. But particularly with certain communities, because there's a history of unspeakable injustice, now that anger is still finding expression. And is there still that injustice? Yes. But the important thing we need to understand is, there was injustice by law. Now by law it is leveled out. It is only a social level of injustice being perpetuated by individual human beings. This you're not going to change just by slogans, just by protests, just by going here and there, because that you could do to change the laws, which successfully you have done, and it's fantastic. But that happened only probably 50, 60 years ago, probably in 1960s. But since then, now the law is level, but the society is not level. This will not happen by fighting, because see, if I fight with you, your walls will become thicker and tighter against me, isn't it? So it's very important that now the striving for justice must change its mode from the times of civil liberties movement, when the law itself was unjust. Now the law, I believe, if there is anything wrong I am saying, please correct me. By law, I believe everything is leveled out. It is only in practice, because practice means individual transformation. Without individual transformation in a society, by practice nothing will change. By law, we have achieved equality, but now in practice it needs to happen. This needs individual transformation. When this question Laurie asked me, if such people are there, will you still talk about inner transformation? Especially for them, absolutely. Absolutely, because when you're disadvantaged, it's very important. People can take advantage of you only in small areas of life. If they can affect your happiness, if they can affect your well-being, if they can affect what is happening within you, that's exactly what they want to do to you. That's exactly what they want to do to you. It's very, very important you don't give them that liberty. Well, socially they're placing you up and down, economically they're placing you up and down, but in terms of happiness, if they see you're happier than them, then their children may follow you, not them.
And you're saying that's a profound part, that we don't realize our own power is. So
I in my travels, I'm sure it's true with you. Wherever I've gone in the world, there are people, I encounter people who have been victims of injustice, who have been who just were born in the wrong place at the wrong time, in terms of the accumulation of just sociological or social or economic pleasures, let's say, right? But they're happy. They've decided, they've made this decision that they are not going to allow any of these external factors and forces to really hold them down. They say, I will go beyond that, and I'm going to see that I could just live my entire life being extremely unhappy and being angry. And if there's then a movement, or if there's people around who are emphasizing or reinforcing that idea to be happy and fight for justice and be angry, and then that's the path to take. But I always encounter people who say, I'm not going down that path. I'm going to really take this other journey in myself and not get caught up in that. Because I think it's what you said. I had a very similar experience. I wasn't 12 or 13. I was about 20. And I think I had a very similar experience, that I saw that I needed to fight for justice. But the fight was, it was going to take my entire life, and it would be not only in the community around me, but everywhere I turned my attention, there was injustice. And so I was going to spend my entire life being unhappy, never smiling, never laughing, always being angry. And I decided I couldn't do that. Like that didn't make sense to me.
But I want to start with you though, but for both of you, Most people are not happy though.
Most people aren't happy.
I agree. I've seen plenty of people who, in spite or maybe because of their circumstance, and they are happy, but most of us are not.
Yeah,
and
because
so
most of us have bought into the materialist idea.
But no, wait, hang on. But I want to challenge you both further than that, because I'm looking at the world and I'm looking at the design and I'm looking and it looks like to some of us that it's been designed in a way to make us unhappy, for us to be unhappy. Why should we come into the world and have to figure all this out? And only a couple people figure it out, and then they have to tell everybody, and then they have to convince us. So I want to hear from the
Sadhguru, actually.
I want to hear,
why is the world designed this way?
Why is it designed this way? But why? And I'm going to say it as why, just as the only way I can get it out. But why is it structured in such a way that most of us don't understand this important truth? And it feels like another level of advantage and disadvantage again. So can we speak to that?
Yes. So when you're, if you just look back, Laurie, when you were 5, 6 years of age, well, you're a bundle of joy just bouncing around as a piece of life. You're not a person, you're not a woman, you're not nothing, you're just life, just, a bundle of joy. But at that time, if somebody had to make you unhappy, they had to try hard to make you unhappy. Today, people have reversed their life by the time they're 30. Now people have to work hard to make them happy. What is the problem? Well, Sam was pointing out about the materialistic thing. See, as a generation of people, is it true that we as a generation of people have the highest level of comforts and conveniences compared to any other generation ever in the history of humanity? Is that so? 100%, isn't it?
I mean, yeah. I think, yeah.
No, never before human beings had this level of comfort and convenience as you and me have right now. So tell me, when could I talk to somebody in Pennsylvania looking at their faces without actually traveling there?
Right.
When could I do this?
Yeah.
It is only now, all right?
Yeah.
So I'm saying there is nothing to complain about the material aspect of life. Still, unfortunately, a segment of humanity in the world is still unfortunately struggling for food and other things. Those things have to be fixed, but that also to be fixed if only everybody had a little more inclusive experience of life. That could be fixed in no time. Why I'm saying this is, see, for example, in 2016, I'm talking about statistics of 2016. In 2016, we produced enough food. Like we produced something like 18.6 billion tons of billion or trillion tons of food, whatever. But that is enough food for nearly 16 or 17 billion people. We were not even half of that. How come still half the population is hungry? Obviously, we don't care, isn't it? If we did not have food, that's a different thing. Somebody has to eat, somebody has to starve, unfortunately. We have food, but still people are starving. What does this mean? Because we have our territories to protect. This territory, you may call it family, you may call it community, race, religion, nationality, or union of nations, whatever you call it. But fundamentally, you are living by boundaries. Boundaries because right now your whole experience of life is physical in nature. When I say physical, physicality exists only because of a defined boundary. Without a defined boundary, there is no such thing as physical. So because of the moment you identify yourself with your physical self, which is an accumulation, now boundaries become your way. You only think of expanding your boundaries at the most cautiously, but never think of living without boundaries, because physical self needs boundaries. See, this is my body, that is your body. This boundary is very important and it is sacred. We must maintain these boundaries. But on all other dimensions of life, we don't need boundaries. In our thought, in our emotion, in our love, in our joy, we don't need boundaries. But we have fixed boundaries there simply because our identity is rooted in our physical self, where the basis of physicality is boundary, so we are always going boundaries. But at the same time, whoever you are, whatever you are in the society, wherever you are placed, you're always trying to be something more than who you are right now. In whichever currency…
So I'm gonna pause because you're saying boundaries and it's directly connected to the next thing I want us to get to. so that we have, I know you had a question, but let me just ask this
Go
one
ahead.
and then maybe
Yep.
you can talk about it. So we were talking about boundaries and I'm thinking nationalism. And I know both of our respective countries are struggling in this way with bitter conflicts. And I wanted to ask you both, thinking about nationalism, because now you're talking about it in a different term, which I'm really happy to now hear. When people choose sides and choose whatever, they escalate the problems and the troubled social worlds between us. And so, what are you both thinking about this nationalism that we're seeing rising in our respective countries, obviously in different ways? Can we talk about that?
Yeah, let me go first because let me say what I see or what concerns me, and I'm really curious, Sadhguru, about what you would say. I mean, I see this here in the United States. I mean, I'm seeing the rise in nationalism around the world in a way, right? And you were talking about boundaries in terms of our bodies, but I think, well, they also identify with these boundaries that are national borders. And I think if I leave the planet and I look down on the earth, I don't see any national borders. Here we have this struggle between Mexico and the United States, and President Trump wanted to build a big, huge wall, and other people think there shouldn't be a wall. And like, why is there a wall? If I look at it from the eyes of the gods, there's no wall there. So this is something that we create, and then we come to identify it with it. And here we identify with it. And then your work, with your experience with Indigenous Americans, I'm an illegal immigrant to this land from their perspective, right? So all this nationalism is just this stuff that we create, and then we over-identify with these nations or cultures or groups or religions, and then it makes it really easy to fight and to go to war and to kill one another around that. And I know we see a similar thing in India. And I'm just wondering what's your message about this, because it's just so dangerous to me. I'm so afraid.
Before you say what's your message, what's your message? Because
my message, I suppose, is that I'm all of my teaching is an attempt to temper people's identification with sociological groups that are in some ways artificial, right? And this goes along with your work, right? That the everything that is thrust upon us is artificial. It comes from outside. And the more we take those in and the more we internalize them, then we are identifying with an artificial sociological construct. And then the more we do that, it can become really dangerous, because it becomes us and them, the good and the bad, those people and us people. And it happens along all sorts of lines. And so all of my work, my entire life, but certainly my work and our work, is to get people to stop with the walls and stop with the boundaries and lower them. And so things like, nationalism or ethnocentrism or, kind of a religious, heightened religious ideology, just temper that. And so I'm always speaking to just relax. That's not your identity, that flag, that country, that group. And so I'm wondering so for you, how do you see that, and how do you do that in your work?
See, personally, I'm not identified with such things, but as a sociological phenomena, we must understand this. For example, let's say India's independence is only 74 years old. It's going to be 75 the next year. So in pre-1947, you had to rev up a lot of nationalism, otherwise nobody would fight, nobody would get the oppressor out. Well, we fought in a unique way, in a peaceful way, and got an occupying force which was there for over 250 years out of the country, which example kind of inspired South African movement, and here the civil liberties movement. All this was inspired by that mode of fighting with people without actually shedding their blood. So this method was evolved in India, but all said and done, you needed nationalism when you were fighting for your freedom. So later on, where it was country was left in abject shambles and they went away without any system in place. So first 20, 30 years, we needed a little lower level of nationalism, but we still needed strong nationalism. Now we are progressing economically at various levels. Now we need to temper down our nationalism more and more. but still we have 20 to 25% of the population which is struggling to be fed on a daily basis. So we still need some nationalism. So nationalism is something that you must temper depending upon the historical times in which you're in. So taking the example of United States, where I know there is a whole lot of people complaining about everything here also, but generally nowhere else on the planet is the survival of an individual human being better organized than it is in United States. Here you must definitely lower your nationalism. But talking about the wall, whether you actually built a wall which was just a political thing, whatever they want to build a wall, but there is a wall, you cannot say no. The immigration counters are a wall, you can't pass through that, all right? So, wall, physical wall or no, we can debate whether it's sensible thing to do or not. But is there a wall, is there a boundary for a nation? There is, because the fundamental definition of a nation is a boundary. This boundary becomes now necessary simply because of the economic disparity that is there. If Canada, Mexico, Southern American countries, all of them were at the same level of economic development, I think the boundary would naturally not exist. But right now the disparity is so high, the migration levels will be so high that it will be unmanageable. So people may talk on the surface, we don't want a wall, but do they want people to just walk in and camp on your streets? Definitely no. So how to handle this in a humane manner is something we have to look at, rather than looking at it as an ideological standpoint, how to deliver these things in the most humane manner possible. Will it be absolutely humane? I don't believe that, because migration itself is a very cruel process. People dragging their women and children and walking to a new place not knowing where they will go is not an easy process, it's an extremely cruel thing. But is that avoidable right now? No, because the economic disparity is so high, is so stark, so inevitably that's going to happen. So these are not to be looked at as ideological standpoints or political stances that we take. These need to be looked at in a more humane way as to how. Because we can't just destroy all the boundaries and live here, we're still not in that kind of condition. But how to put the boundaries in a humane way without causing too much, cruelty to human beings is something that we must constantly look at. There's no one magic wand for this, as far as I can see.
I agree with you on that, and I think it's unfortunate that the power of leaders comes from accumulating as much support as they possibly can among a particular collectivity or particular population of people. And so for them to build this, to build these really strong boundaries and to do it with a fierceness is actually the place from which they extract their power. And so somebody comes along who has a message like me or you, or comes along and says, listen, you need to temper that. But that goes against the very nature of becoming a leader, because your leadership is built on that. And so I'm with you. This is the
underbelly of a democracy,
Yeah,
This is the
well,
underbelly of a democracy.
Yeah, and democracy is a thing that doesn't exist ever, right? It's just something we strive for. You can have greater democratic process or lesser or weaker democratic process, but democracy is just an ideal that we reach toward. And it's a good idea, but it's a good ideal that just helps to put as much power in the hands of people, the population at large as possible. Yeah.
Is there anything that you don't agree with? Because it's always interesting to see different sides. Not that then to see where you agree.
I think that you
Why are you setting Sam against me?
Yeah. Well, I think that I understand. Yeah, I understand that. Your point about a certain amount of nationalism, because look, you can't get you have to get human beings to act as a collective unit in order to solve really big problems. If everybody just goes out and acts on their own, then we don't have there's no collectivity. They can't and they won't work together. And so we need something that they can identify with that will allow them to work in concert with one another. And so whether it's a cultural identity or an ethnic identity or a flag or maybe a political party, then it's all part of sociology. This is the nature of being human. It's just that those are all can so quickly be used against people, and then one group is pitted against another group, and then we have conflict, and sometimes we have conflict that we can't get out of. And I think, we're seeing this. We've always seen it around the world, obviously, but we're continuing to see it. And I think for me, I'm scared, is really fearful as to where things could really go. There's so many weapons of the world, and there's such an ability to destroy and to harm one another. That it concerns me greatly. So I'm always speaking out to try to understand what these barriers are, but also to lower them as much as possible. Weaken people's identification with these.
I have a question to build on that, but I first want to ask, is there any, do you want to open up?
We have
something about this identity.
Yeah, go ahead. We have 15 minutes. So if you say something quickly and then we'll go, and I want to bring some students.
That's what I'm asking. So can I just ask, staying with this for a moment, Sadhguru, and then you can say that piece that you want to say. Just what we're in a very, let's just stay with the United States for right now. Yeah. We're in a very perilous position right now because of what you've been talking about. These boundaries in lots of different dimensions of our world we could point to are making people more and more into their groups. They're choosing sides, choosing teams, and then most of what we're doing is escalating the conflict and the differences between us, right? And I think we're in a grave and perilous moment right now, historically. So with that in mind, what would the two of you say in the sense of like, we have to do this right now? This is the thing that we need right now. Do you know what I mean? Something that's urgent. What would be your urgent response to what we need right now? Sadhguru, can you?
There is a certain fundamental to this. You cannot ignore that and arrive at an action. See, first of all, the need for identity, where is it coming from? How is it bred? So in modern societies, we have not addressed the significance of identity. If you give me a minute or two, I can explain the mechanics of what's happening in the human mind. See, if you want to look at it like this, in yogic aspect of life, we look at human intelligence and human mind as 16 parts. These 16 parts have 4 segments. The first one is the intellect. Your intellect, would you like it to be sharp or dull or blunt? Would you like it sharp or blunt?
Sharp.
Sharp. Yes. So you understand that it's a cutting instrument. So you want the front edge of you to be a knife. So if you have a knife, you can be a surgeon, you can cook a meal, or you can slash somebody, all right? So different ways to use it. So how will this knife be used? Now this knife, how we hold it also, right now, what human beings are suffering is their own intellect. If you take away half their brain, most of them or all of them will be peaceful. Right now, human beings are in a funny state of suffering their own intelligence. They think something else is causing it. Repeatedly, we have come back to sociological conditions of wealth and inequalities in society and living conditions and everything. All that is fine, but you need to understand you're holding the knife from the wrong end. The harder you hold it, the more it will hurt. First thing is you must learn to hold the knife properly, because the sharper it is, the better it is, and your intellect can only dissect things, it cannot embrace anything. We need to understand this. Right now, our education systems are completely enslaved to human intellect. No other form of intelligence within you is being cultivated. No other form of intelligence within you is in any way enhanced through the whole education process unless individual human beings do it by themselves, by their own means. Normal education system is all about intellect. So having said that, the next dimension of intelligence is referred to as ahankara, which literally means the identity. See, right now, the nature of your intellect is such, it will always protect your identity. See, right now, because there are men and women, you identify yourself as a woman. Anything that hurts that identity, you will immediately stand up and fight. You identify as an American, you'll stand up and fight. Maybe for race, religion, everything somebody will fight, all right? The important thing is, whatever you are identified, let us give this analogy, take this analogy further. This is a knife. The identity is the hand that holds it. So the knife does not decide what happens, whether surgery happens, murder happens, the knife does not decide. It is the hand that decides this. But this hand is rooted into what is called as manas, which is a silo of memory. There are 8 dimensions of memory, from evolutionary memory, genetic memory, karmic memory, articulate, inarticulate memories, conscious and unconscious levels of memories. All these memories, most of it you are unconscious of. Just a small part of it which has happened in these last few years is what you are conscious of. Rest is largely unconscious. But that memory determines your identity. And because of that identity, your knife wields in a particular way. Who it hurts or who it saves simply depends upon what type of identity and what kind of memory. But there is a 4th dimension of intelligence within us, which we refer to as chitta. This is intelligence which is unsullied by memory. There is not an iota of memory in this. This is pure intelligence of life. Now, if your identity is with this dimension of intelligence, then you will see you will be completely unprejudiced and equanimous about life, and being blissful and ecstatic every moment of your life is natural. Just look at this. Right now, let us say you're walking on the street, you're very happy. Somebody did something, let's say they stepped on your foot. If you're very happy, you'll say it's all right and go on. If you're unhappy, if you're frustrated, if you're angry with something already, oh, you will blow up. Today I see on the American street, everybody is driving their dream cars, but nobody seems to be happy except those guys who've stolen a car and enjoying it. All the others who own a car seem to be driving with grim faces. If you as much as get somewhere in their way, they will yell or they show their fingers to you, they do obscene gestures to you, all this. Why is this happening? You're driving your dream car, all right? You're in the highest level of comfort compared to any other generation ever before, simply because your identities are such. Your identity has not been worked out. I must tell you this, right from ancient times in India, before starting education, a child has
Wait,
to take
Sadhguru.
up… One
So wait,
second, 1 second. Just
no,
one moment.
I just have to tell you, just because we have only a couple minutes for some student comments or questions. So say to us, what is that thing that you're, given what you just laid out, which we love, what is the thing that you're like, okay, you're gonna tell us like, do this, Americans.
It is just that before starting education in India, we always gave the child a cosmic identity. You would not identify with your parents, not with your family, not with your religion, but a cosmic identity. We are compelled to utter a mantra which tells, I am the cosmos, I am the universe. So I am saying we have to do this. Our national anthems, our national flags, our county flags, our state flags, all this is fine. These are all needed. Otherwise there is no life going on. But a child should be brought up with at least, if not cosmic, at least a global identity. It is very, very important. If you don't do this, we can go on talking forever, but the same problems will manifest in different ways for different reasons.
Yeah,
And what's your quick answer to that?
I like that, a cosmic identity. Yeah, just go beyond. Yeah, and I would say our education system here is failing just miserably because we lack that.
So do you want to bring some students?
Yeah, we have a couple student questions. So we have about 6 minutes left, and then we're going to do the last top hat at the end. But
what are the questions?
Well, the one is at the bottom there. I think we wrote one down at the bottom.
This one or this one?
The first one. This was actually a question that a student had the other day in class when she knew that you were going to be here, be our guest. If you could just take a couple minutes. This is one of those cosmic questions you could talk about for a year, but maybe just get.
So maybe this is just speaking to the Social 19 students here from all different backgrounds and ages, et cetera, communities. So the question is to them: how do I know if I'm on the path that is right for me?
No path is right for you. Wherever you walk it, whatever path you walk, you can make it right. That's the important thing. How do you make it right? So you need to understand this life is… I know this is this is a big fad in America. What's the purpose of my life? See, if you have your own purpose in this life, you are a tyrant. You need to understand the life here is such that every life here, from a plant, animal, bird to a tree and everything, Everything is striving to be just a full-fledged life. That is all. It is just that human life, what is full-fledged, we know what is a full-fledged ant, we know what is a full-fledged elephant, we know what's a full-fledged tree, but we do not know what is a full-fledged human being. So the most important thing that you need to do with your life is, you don't arrive at these conclusions and start believing these conclusions. These conclusions in terms of nationality, race, religion have caused enough harm to humanity. The most important thing is, in your life you remain a seeker. To remain a seeker, the most fundamental qualification is, you have realized that you do not know. I do not know is the greatest possibility in your life. If you stay that way, that you do not know, then your intelligence is always awake, and with this, it doesn't matter where you walk, you will make it the right thing.
You know, that's
Social 119, what do you think?
Students, there it is. You know, I have this idea, Sadhguru is a teacher, that I've been now a professor for 37 years. And I feel like each day, I get less knowledgeable, I'm less intelligent. I feel like I'm just getting dumber. And I really appreciate that, because
Hey, Sam, this is not a confession, huh?
No, listen, it's the beauty. I feel as though as I acquire what I think maybe is a little bit more wisdom, meaning that I talk less, I understand less, and I think that's the source, or that indicates that perhaps I'm acquiring some wisdom. And I feel like I really know less, and somehow that it helps me, both as a seeker, but as just in my heart and in my spirit, I feel more whole, and I feel like I can be a better professor by not knowing.
You're
So we have
moving
one.
from belief system to seeking less burden. So great.
Yeah. Oh my God. Hey, so here's the final question. So today is for many Americans, this is kind of a new holiday in the United States. It's the day of 420, and all the people who use marijuana here in the United States use this day as their holiday, so to speak. And I'm sure many of my students will be participating in the so-called holiday of 420. Can you say something about that, and about using
So
not just maybe marijuana, but drugs and
on a lighter vein, you must, as a professor, you must find out in India what the number 420 means in the IPC or the Indian Penal Code. You must find that out. I won't tell you that now.
Okay,
So you
all right.
research.
All
About
right.
marijuana, well, look at my eyes, I'm always stoned.
Yeah.
Always. Always. Yes, otherwise if you are not in some way intoxicated, you cannot handle what I am handling in the world right now. The number of projects, the number of volunteers, the number of events that's happening in the world. And our sleep, for almost 25 years, on an average, I slept 2.5 hours a day and managed my activity. These days, little more lazy, I'm sleeping 4.5 hours. But this level of activity, everything is possible only if you are exuberant and intoxicated at the same time. And you also know how to be still within yourself. So intoxication, unfortunately, people are drinking glasses of whatever, or now this weed is popular and some are not satisfied with that, they are manufacturing their own stuff, all this is fine. I'm not using this, I'm not speaking about this as a moral issue. I'm talking about as a, low-level technology, that's all I'm talking about. If you want to look at this is the most sophisticated and complex chemical factory on the planet, not a marijuana plant, not a cocaine plant, not anything. This is the most complex and sophisticated chemical mechanism on the planet. The number of chemical reactions it's doing per second is like way above everything else. So when you have such a chemical factory within yourself, the question is only, are you a great CEO or are you a lousy CEO? If you are a great CEO, you will make the chemicals that are wonderful for you. If you're a lousy CEO, you will create chemicals of stress, tension, depression, works. If you are a great CEO, you will create chemicals which will cause ecstasy within you. It's my wish and my blessing, every young person in America should get this, not be dependent on external things. But here, there is a tremendous mechanism. If you explore and exploit this, there is more than you can get from anywhere
Put
else.
me back on also.
That is quite an answer.
Yeah, that's really that's a great answer. Thank you. And you
And
it
with
is
that,
and we are at time, Sadhguru. I really appreciate the conversation.
and thank you for, I know that your ideas will be talked about by students and others, and thank you for challenging us, because I think you said a lot of things that are not in the same line as where a lot of the thinking is. So thanks for giving us an opportunity to continue to chew on all of that.
Thank you very much for having me in the university, though I'm not qualified for anything. Thank you very much.
Well,
And wonderful
I'm
to
not
meet
much
you. Hope
qualified.
we'll catch up with you sometime when we are in that part of the country, or you could come here. Please, my regards to all the students who work with you. Namaskaram to every one of you.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Yeah, thank you. And be well. And thank you to your team who did an excellent job. And all your volunteers who are doing good work in the world. You didn't mention it, but planting millions, not just planting trees, planting millions and millions of trees, and all of the work on behalf of the planet. It's really important.
They are the better half of me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Lori's the better half of me, so I get that. Yeah. Well, listen, thank you. Really appreciate it.
Namaskaram. Thank you very much.
Okay. Yeah.
Mhm.
What can I say?